Hi, Pastor Sam. How are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. So you went prison
Yes, sir.
at a certain age. How old were you then?
I think I was 18.
18. Why? What was it?
I went prison for robbery at the time, 2 counts of robbery at the time.
What makes an 18-year-old rob? What were you looking for?
Now that I look back, it's over 10 years ago, it's more to do with choice. I decided to be involved in a life in the street. I can't really say I had bad life anymore. I have 2 good parents. They provided things for me, but I just felt like I wanted more, I just felt, no, I want a bit more to life. So I can't really say why, but I know it's choice.
So it's been 10 years. I won't dwell too much on the prison, but then you came out. What changed? Did you come out thinking, okay, now I'm going to change my life around. I'm going to be a great guy. I've learned a lot in prison. I've learned, or what? You came out as what? What were you thinking?
Well, I came out as somebody that met a lot of connections in prison. I wanted to take the drug route next.
Because robbery is long.
The robbery was too loud.
Yeah, okay.
It was too loud, so I wanted to take drugs, calm down a bit, be less violent, start doing drugs. But I met yourself, and that's mentorship. So I would accredit it to mentorship as the #1 reason why I changed.
How old were you then? You'd be like 20
years old.
Early.
20 years old.
20 years old.
20 years old.
Now you're the senior pastor, Spark Nation. You've led and you're leading a lot of young people.
Yes, sir.
And stuff like that. What have you learned in those 10 years? If you're gonna put it in 3 things, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
what would you say you learned in those 10 years of being led and then leading like countless hundreds of young people?
I think #1, the first lesson I would have learned was the lesson of the importance of mentorship. Mentorship shows you exactly what you were trying to communicate all those years ago. The same desire that took me to prison is the same desire that is allowing me to lead people today.
Yeah.
So mentorship, #1 was that mentorship helped me to communicate what I wanted to be in court. Okay. #1. #2, the lesson that I learned was to put aside, and this is going to sound a bit funny, but to put aside ambition. I learned that I will manifest who I will be as I grow. Even though there will be mistakes along the way, I will actually become who.
Have there been mistakes along the way?
Many.
Like 2 examples of 1?
Yeah, you could say, well, I wouldn't actually call them mistakes. I would call them experiences that I've learned from. But you could say starting to try and do business. Yeah. You've borrowed money, you've made promises to people, and these were people that thought you were their leader and stuff like that, and all of a sudden there may be some discrepancies in your business and stuff like that, and you've not projected it rightly to people. Those kinds of mistakes, nothing too major.
You've taken risk in business and it's not added up to what you expected.
Exactly.
How did you deal with that, or how do you deal with that?
I learned to deal with that by now knowing that it's normal. Okay. It's normal to try and attempt to do better.
Yeah.
Because where we're coming from, there's not many people taking the risk that I decided to take.
Yeah.
So I've now learned that it's normal, and I think the reason why I would call it a mistake is because taking risk and trying to do business is foreign in our community. Yeah. And taking people along and saying, let's push this business together is foreign in our community. Yeah. So now I've learned to deal with it. Again, mentorship was a big part of that. But then also by understanding that it's normal and that you keep pushing until you get where you're going.
That's amazing. And you were learning all this in your 20s?
All of it in my 20s. I've only just turned 30.
Wow. Yeah, you turned 30 the other day.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so back to what I was going to ask, which is, what have you learned in leading people all through the years, and how do you attract so many young people to listen to you and see them and watch them grow? You live with about 10, 20 winners.
I live with 18 people at the moment. Yeah. I think it's to say #3, which is tolerance. Tolerance was the major lesson that I learned in leadership. I think that's I think if I'm able to put it in words, what distinguishes us in our leadership and why people are attracted is because we're able to tolerate people, their behaviors, their faults. You know, people look for a world of perfection.
Yeah.
But I understand that people won't be perfect.
Yeah.
People can be flawed. And from the youngest of us, I mean, I sit down and talk to 14-year-olds and I realize that their parents struggle at home to deal with them. So from the youngest of us to the oldest of us, we can be flawed.
Yeah.
And what we have is a place of tolerance for them in order to then guide them into where they need to be or where they want to be.
Yeah.
So that's a major lesson.
That's an amazing lesson.
Yeah.
So you started a company, Recruitment for young people.
That's correct.
But give us the gist of it. How many young people were recruited to
Yeah.
go and work, and what happened? Why did you do it and stuff like that?
So the company was to help young people get into employment.
Okay.
And I think we further developed on that vision now. But to start, it started out in 2015. And then over the few years, we've been managed to get hundreds of young people into employment.
Right.
At the peak of what we are and were doing, we were doing about 200 people a month that we were helping to get trained and then into certain jobs. So, and it's all there on paperwork and statistics. Then the reason why we did that was because we noticed in our community that it's very difficult for the young man to, first of all, be skilled.
Yeah.
And then also to find job opportunities out there. So for me at that time, I didn't necessarily have anything I wanted to do, but I picked this up as my personal mission.
Right.
And then from there, we've just been able to continue recruiting. So just recently, we've now begun to team up with logistic companies and then also trading companies and begin to recruit young people, give them skills that they may not necessarily have had at a young age. And then begin to upskill them and then place them in a position where they can have financial income.
How does it feel to be following a pastor from the age of 20 and then become a pastor so early? And then you have people watching you who expect you to be an angel, perfect, flawless, just so angelic.
Yeah.
How do you process that in your mind when people express maybe disappointment?
Yes.
How do you process that? How do you survive that?
To be honest, sir, I don't process it anymore. And I thank your leadership for that. I think I grew up under a pastor that I saw evolve. You're a lot different from what you were 10 years ago.
Oh, that's good news for me.
But I don't know if it's in a good or a bad way.
Okay.
But when I say you're a lot different, I think you became who you are, who you always were. Sorry. So all I did was follow that template of being more confident in who I'm designed to be.
Yeah.
So for me, there's no pressure because when people meet me now, encounter me, they encounter the real me.
Yeah.
I tend to feel like there can be a church system where pastors have to hide being themselves.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up in that system, so I'm very fortunate.
Wow. So if someone is 20 now, would you advise them to start following pastoring or be a pastor from the age of 20? Won't that be, they're not going to enjoy their lives, they're not going to be out there expressing themselves?
It's the best success you can have. Number one, pastoring is not something, I mean, maybe before now, it's something that people would have looked at as the least role in the community. Maybe for whatever reason that is.
Yeah.
But now, the first advantage it gives you is the advantage of leading people.
Yeah.
People are in every endeavor and sphere of life.
Yeah.
So that is the biggest advantage I was given to become a pastor at the age of 20, because I understand human behavior. And that's not psychology. That is understanding how to lead people.
Yeah.
So for me, if I wanted to, I took a 20-year-old and I would put him in an advantage of becoming a pastor, because in that you will deal with all the problems that you will face in every endeavor of life.
That's amazing. So a 20-year-old Sam is watching right now, maybe in prison, maybe just at home.
Yeah.
What would you say to a 20-year-old guy in Croydon? You grew up in Croydon or around Croydon,
Around Croydon,
so to speak. What would you say? What would you say to that kind of a young man who don't even know what to do with life, or who thinks that they want to be something greater?
Yeah. I think if you want to be something great, the number one thing to do is locate a great person. And then another thing to do is then to follow that great person.
Okay.
Now, let me define follow because that can be so broad, but would be to listen to what they are saying at that time.
Okay.
And then number 3 advice, which will be my final advice, is to then give yourself time. Because once you have attached yourself to great people, it is going to be a natural consequence that you too will become great. But give yourself time and give yourself opportunity to learn from great people.
Amazing. I think what qualifies, thank you for that. I think what qualifies Pastor Sam to be the senior pastor of Spark Nation, in my own opinion, is his flaws. Whatever that means, I can't even say this, but I think the flaws and then the power that comes from a flawed vessel is powerful. I've seen this man lead hundreds and hundreds of young people. So I call him a community leader, an inspiration for many, many young people to know that you can actually be prosperous as a community leader. It's not a rap or a footballer. I think you tried to be a footballer.
Yeah, like long ago.
These are the things that inspire me. These are the things that this is what I came to this country to do. I just didn't know at the time, but seeing it now is so inspiring to me. Thank you very much for coming.
Sir.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts with us.
It's a pleasure.
Hey, Nation family, our job is to bring up stories like this, inspire a whole new generation to press into what has not been done before, stories that are immortal, stories that people will look back years after and embrace who they are and be confident in what God has called them to be. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Tout en mettant ma